shit, guys! Fire our shit!
Well, howdy folks, and welcome back to your home port and the return of the park benches. Today I'm going to give you a preview of the new line of French battleships that were kindly provided to me by Wargaming in order to test and report out to you their specifications as they stand right now. Keep in mind that what I discuss here today may not be what is presented to the public when they are finalized. Overall, I think these ships are competitive with their tier mates, sometimes better, sometimes worse. There are several paper ships in this line, Wargaming having taken liberties, some larger than others, when it comes to the presentation of these ships and their loose adherence to historical fact and creative interpretation of a nation's planned upgrades to a ship. Now the line starts at Tier 3 with what I'm going to call the Turenne. That's the best I can do. While Turenne did not exist in real life, her design was the basis for the Corbeil class battleships to come. The in-game models based on the Danton class pre-Dreadnought, although enlarged in-game. Hull arrangements, armor protection, and propulsion are of the pre-Dreadnought era, and her weapons are based on the Dreadnought era, for example. Turenne is not as well armored as her Japanese and American contemporaries, but is competitive with UK and German Tier 3s. Once you have the hull upgrade in place, you will have a minuscule AA loadout that is not much use, but main artillery is on par with their tier mates, as is the mobility. At Tier 4 we have the Corbeil, named ship of a class of 4 who all fought in World War I, but by 1931 there were only 2 left, and they received major overhauls to enable them to fight in World War II. As I mentioned, Turenne's design was the basis for the Corbeil class, and so there are many similarities like the armor layout. Corbeil's armor layout is superior to Miyogi and Wyoming, but not as good as Kaiser or Orion. The minimal AA armament can be an issue when you have run into up-tiered aircraft carriers, so best try to buddy up. Your main artillery is quite competitive in tier, despite being a slightly smaller caliber than Miyogi or Orion. Tier 5 brings us the Bretagne, and once fully upgraded in-game, she'll have a hull much like her sister ship Lorraine had after her refurbishment during the war. Despite many upgrades to the anti-aircraft loadout that comes with the second hull, you can't rely on it entirely to keep you safe. Bretagne pretty much has the same armor as Corbeil and Turenne, but even so, she is superior to Congo and New York, but would not hold up as well as Kaiser or Iron Duke. Her maneuverability is competitive with her tier mates, and her gun caliber of 305mm is a bit lower than average for the tier, but still effective. And now we come to Normandy at Tier 6. This is a hypothetical upgrade that the ship could have received around 1938, coming completely from the collective imagination of Wargaming staff. Hull work includes lengthening the ship and adding a new bow that is much like the aircraft carrier Baron, and Baron is also based off this class, so it could follow, as well as mounting typical AA defenses of 1941. Normandy has the worst armor of Tier 6 battleships and the lightest caliber artillery. One of the side effects of Wargaming's inspired creativity here is a completely unrealistic mobility profile, having used the machinery specs from Dunkirk, giving Normandy a top speed of 28 knots, and it's a rudder shift time of 10.8 seconds. Lack of realism aside, this ship is really fun to play when fully upgraded with second hull, fire control, and propulsion, as well as using the main battery modification 2, which reduces turret traverse by 15%, but adds 1.5 seconds to your reload time. Round out your upgrades with the steering gears modification 2 and reduce that rudder shift time by 20%, making Normandy pretty twisty-turny at 10.8 second rudder shift, high speed, and a tight turning circle of 640 meters. I like this ship. Tier 7 brings us to the Lille, essentially an enlarged Normandy with an extra quadruple turret of 340mm artillery, slightly better armor, and a lower top speed and larger turning circle. In fact, the lower top speed and turning circle are a little more realistic. Turret rotation and rudder shift times are not as good as Normandy either, so you will want to load the main battery modification 2 and steering gears modification 2 upgrades to spruce that up a bit. Overall, the armor is inferior to every other Tier 7 battleship. It isn't to say that it's bad, it's just not as good. Watch your angling closely. It's not all bad though. Lyon's anti-aircraft armament is the first loadout in the line that I could say was decent. Not calling it good yet, but it is decent. Tier 8 is a radical departure in the French line as far as design goes, with Richelieu mounting all heavy artillery in 2 quadruple turrets forward and none aft. There is also the Tier 6 Dunkirk, which has this arrangement, but that's a premium ship. Armor layout's quite good, being superior to Amagi in North Carolina, roughly on par with Bismarck, and inferior to Monarch. At this point, there is nothing extraordinary left to report for Richelieu. Mobility, anti-aircraft armament, torpedo defenses, and main artillery are all competitive with their tier mates. Tier 9. Alsace. Feels like a good ship. It's comfortable and effective. Belt armor's not as good as Isimo or Lions, but clearly better than Iowa and Frederick de Grosser. Alsace also has very strong Citadel deck armor, outclassing most competitors currently in the game. And while blessed with competitive mobility and good anti-aircraft armament, she does have the lightest artillery in tier at 380 millimeters, mounted in 3 quadruple turrets. This is a good ship. I look forward to having her in my own port. And finally, we come to Tier 10, the end of the line. Sadly, I screwed up. I thought I had more time to record some footage for France, so we'll have to make do with picks for this one. France has very good armor, very competitive in tier with only Yamato and Montana showing any clear superiority. She has very good anti-aircraft armament and the largest caliber guns in tier at 431 millimeters. They're big honkers. These guns also come with a worst dispersion in tier as well, 322 meters on a range of 26.1 kilometers. That's going to make hitting targets at long range very problematic, I think. The option is there, just don't be disappointed if you don't connect all that often. Overall, I think the whole French line, as they stand, will be very competitive in the game and fun to play. Park benches and all, none of them being any kind of obvious crap. For myself, as I noted earlier, Normandy at tier 6 is all kinds of fun. I keep coming back to that one to play in just one more round, you know? And now that the French are in the game, I naturally went to the tech tree to get started on the grind, and then I had one of those WTF moments. They're not there. Damn it, Jim, I am a doctor, not a detective. The French battleships will be in tech tree in an upcoming update to the game. Right now, if you really don't want to wait, you can buy crates in the store which will get you missions that you can complete to obtain some of the lower tier ships. I've heard of people with missions for the tier 6 so far, but I've got so much other work to do, I'll just be waiting for their natural appearance in the tech tree. But if you want them now, this is the way to get them. Oh, and I almost forgot. Gascon, the tier 8 premium, has come back for another round of testing, this time with some improvements to secondary gun ranges, bringing them up to 7.5 kilometers and a small reduction in main artillery dispersion figures to tighten up those shots a bit. I think these improvements are spot on, and I would be fine with the ship being presented to the public the way it is. It's fun to play. As always, folks, please remember that all of these ships are still considered to be works in progress. What I've discussed here may not be what is presented to the public when they make their official debut. Well, folks, there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like down below. If you really enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments. As well, be sure to visit my social media pages, both on Facebook and Twitter. This is where I post info that, well, not belonging in a video, it's worth taking a look at. I would also like to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters. You folks are making a huge difference for me. If you like what I do and enjoy the community all of us humans are building, please consider supporting the mission via my Patreon page. There are quite a few options with varying levels of support. Maybe one of them will suit you. Links to all things in the video description. Alright folks, thanks very much for stopping by and watching. I'll catch you next time.